these aren't really up for sale.
There's only 4 in existence.
We sort of. Welcome to the Old Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
How's it going?
Hey, man.
I can tell it's Mike Smith because it says Mike on my mug.
That's right. Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't do the last name because every now and then it seems to escape you. But yeah, these got personalized mugs. These aren't really up for sale.
There's only 4 in existence.
We sort of, look, we went that way. We've been there, done that. Nobody gives a shit about what you're hawking.
Right.
Don't dilute yourself. Don't kid yourself into thinking anybody wants your merch. They don't.
Right.
I
bigger
personally,
size.
I personally have about 9 of the O Brother mugs.
I have at least 4 iterations.
And how much do you owe the bank at this point for all these mugs?
A lot.
None of which were sold to anyone?
I've bought 40 mugs. 40 mugs.
Yeah, that's 40.
And the first Superfan mug went out. But I'm not even going to say who it is.
Yeah, Superfan. Yeah. Well, anyways, we'll come back around to that. So here, this has only happened maybe 1 or 2 other times, maybe. Once at least, I knew we get on mic. You had no idea.
I don't know what we're going to talk about.
You know what we're going to talk about? Now, as we're recording this, we're deep in the throes of Oh Brother Halloween Fest, which,
Correct.
Of course, nobody does it like Oh Brother Podcast or Halloween Fest. It was celebrating all things Halloween, all things horror, doing a lot of movie reviews. We've got a lot of first looks. We're looking at a lot of Halloween horror genre trailers, right? And I want to say, don't really know when this is going to air as some sort of bonus episode. Who knows?
Right.
But I do want to give a shout out to our street team, the O Brother street team, Alyssa and Hannah, a couple of our production assistants who, again, as of this recording, had just launched a new O Brother podcast feature, which Mike is called O Brother on the Street.
Right.
And it was just fantastic. I'm loving this. We've got 1 episode so far. I cannot wait for more.
They're at my first college.
Yeah, I was just loving it. They're engaging with all these
it was a
these
throwback.
hipsters.
Yeah, all these youngsters.
Was it Alexandra who, threw some shade on Halloween? I mean, it was a little bit painful, a little hurtful, I'm not going to lie.
Well, my favorite part of that was Alyssa's reaction.
Alyssa's reaction was classic. It's priceless.
She just had like this stunned look.
Clearly she was looking to us like,
right.
I can't believe, because she knows that. I mean, look behind me. It's pretty evident.
Right.
Look behind you. It's pretty evident.
Right.
But it's interesting because when this, of course, new O Brother podcast fan now was responding to that question, she had explained, right? She gave a rationale. She said, I preface this by saying, I know it's going to be unpopular, kind of controversial, but I'm not a big fan of Halloween, that franchise, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. Now, she is a big fan of Saw, and we're coming up on Saw X, Saw 10, and I'm thinking, isn't that a lot of the same thing too? Isn't it really a lot of the same thing?
It's like, come on, get into a trap, get out of a trap.
And Mike, you know the Saw franchise.
I've seen them all.
I'm getting ready to dive into the Saw franchise. I'm excited. I did see a lot of the first one, but that's about where it ended for me. So but anyways, so Mike, we're back. You don't know what's going on.
I don't.
I told you.
I thought
all I said was, let's do this episode. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You don't need to know. You'll be able to. You've got a memory like an elephant. Is that right? Is that the right where you never forget things? Like you have really good retention.
Yeah, but
for things, right?
Not happy about the elephant thing, but
Is that a honeymooners thing?
I don't know.
Oh no. I think that's a King of Queens bit. But anyways,
probably.
So all right, Mike, this is going to surprise you. It's not. It's already surprising you, but. First of all, that I watched this film and that we're going to be here talking about it has nothing to do with the Halloween Fest. Although I can make a connection, a very sort of Kevin Bacon connection. So, Mike, the other day, a few days ago, what movie did I pop on and watch on Max? that you've been talking about
Mhm.
and saying, I think you should check it out. And, we had planned to do an episode and then it kind of passed us by. And then, you know what? I carved out time to watch the
I
film.
think I know.
What is it?
Flash.
The Flash.
I was right.
So here we are, Mike. We're going to do an episode on The Flash.
Okay. All right.
Now, let me set this up a little bit. So The Flash came out June 16th, 2023. It hit theaters. Now, it just hit streaming on August 25th.
Mhm.
It's on Max, which is where I saw it,
And
right?
it's now on.
Did you see it in the theater?
I did, yes.
Okay, so you saw it in
Mhm.
the theater, which that might I
It
wanna know about that experience. Must've
it's
been
now
good.
on 4K and Blu-ray as well, or DVD.
Do you have it already?
No.
But you're
N
gonna get it.
Until it
Okay, the
like
price
like like
drops.
the sales went,
The
I'm
price
waiting
drops,
for
yeah.
that to go, yeah.
Alright, let me do the usual. Let me set this up a little bit. Now, this is the 13th installment, right, in the DCEU, as they call
Okay.
it. We're
Alright.
big fans here of the DCEU, as everybody that listens to the show knows.
Right.
Little sarcasm there, which, we know what happens when we do that. But,
Yeah.
directed by Andy, Muschietti.
Mhm.
Muschietti, I think is how he says it. I'm probably
Mhm.
butchering it. But anyways, and here's the connection because he directed the first 2 It movies.
Okay.
I don't know if you made that connection.
I
So there is
didn't,
some relevance back
and
to
I've seen both
Halloween.
of those movies as well.
Yeah. Written by Christina Hodson, who also did Birds of Prey and also Bumblebee, which I really liked. I thought that was a good.
And Birds of Prey, isn't that a Harley Quinn movie?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so let me run down a little bit of the cast, just a few of the main players. Ezra Miller, of course, we'll talk about.
Mhm.
Michael Keaton, of course,
Right.
right? A lot to talk about there. Sasha, is it Callie or Cara Zor-El, right?
Right.
As her alien name. Ron Livingston, and there's a story behind that because he wasn't the
As the
original,
dad,
right? Which he was not
which
the
he
original.
wasn't in the, yeah, right, in the last DC
It was Billy
EU.
Crudup.
Correct.
Yeah. Who Billy
And when
Crudup
you
was
get a
in
star of,
Aliens Covenant, right? Billy Crudup was in that, I
was
believe.
he?
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure
know him from
he's a
Almost
great
Famous.
character actor.
Yeah. And when you get a character of that stature, you figure he's gonna stay in that role. So
Right.
I don't know what happened,
I
but
think honestly, it was just because and Mike, you can probably tell the audience more about this than I can or most people, which is all the delay. Like this goes back years and to trace the lineage of the making of this film.
mhm,
I'm not even sure I was alive at the time, quite honestly, when it started. But I think it ended up being just scheduling issues. Billy ended up
probably,
tied to some other project and couldn't do it.
probably.
So all right, and then the last ones I want to be Maribel Verdú, Barry Allen's mother.
Mhm,
Yeah, Nora, I believe Nora Allen.
mhm.
And then of course Michael Shannon reprises his role as General Zod, right?
Right,
And there's some
from
other
Man of Steel.
right, and his sidekick there is back too in the film as well. So budget of $200 million, Mike. I know you're going to talk about this a little bit. Opened at about $55 million.
Which was a disappointment.
Underwhelming to say the least. Grossed US to date about 108 million and
Wow.
worldwide about 268.5 million. That's where we're at with this film. So it is a box office bomb,
I
right? By the numbers,
As
right?
big a bomb as there's been this year.
Yeah, and projected it was about a $200 million loss for Warner Brothers or Warner
Mhm.
Brothers Discovery now, as they're known. That
Right.
happened like in the middle of the night, this
Yeah,
merger between
exactly.
those two.
That means a new fee for streaming somewhere.
Exactly. A lot of new fees coming for
Yeah.
streaming. And maybe towards the end of this episode, Mike, we have another conversation. We have to talk about the D23 announcements. So we'll come back around to that because
Okay.
I know it's irrelevant, but it's very
Right.
relevant. So,
Okay.
anyways, Mike, I just want to say right up front,
Mhm.
I like the film overall. And
It
here's what I got to say,
Mhm.
Mike, that might be controversial, but you and I talk about this all the time in the podcast. I think you'll back me up here. I'm
Mhm.
really surprised, really curious to see what you say. Now, we've talked a lot about separating the art from the artist, correct? And I
Yes.
think Ezra Miller's performance in this movie was really, really well done. It was great, quite honestly. I cannot deny them the performance in this film. It was
Right.
really good.
Right.
It suffered in a lot of other ways.
Especially when he played 2 characters. He played himself in the past. That
Yeah.
was really funny. I mean,
And it was, it's amazing now, Mike. We think about you go back to like Double Impact or whatever with Jean Claude,
right,
and
and the
remember
2
that's
heads.
the two
One head
heads.
was so
There's the one
huge
scene, and I think it's Double Impact where he's hanging on the side, like the
of a
passengers or
truck.
the driver's side door of the truck, and one head is this big, and
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
it was really bad.
But the technology now, and they're doing this thing called volume capture, where right, it's basically an acting double
Mhm.
sharing the space, but they're CGIing
Right.
Ezra Miller's face, but it's so well done, it's like you believe he's got a twin or
You
something.
know when it really, began was with Multiplicity with Michael Keaton.
Interesting.
But if you go back to episodes, I do say it
Mhm.
wasn't Ezra Miller, even though he's gonna take the blame.
You did say that.
I
You
said
did say that.
it's not
You
because of
did.
him that it tanked.
Right.
It really there was a meeting in Hawaii with all the heads of Warner Brothers, and
Yeah.
of course, it had to be in Hawaii
Or
because, you know.
right. You gotta get away from all the distractions.
Right.
Right.
And at that point in time, they could have replaced Ezra Miller, and that was the meeting.
Mhm.
And their
Right.
decision was, "Let's go heavy on Michael Keaton. Let's get him in this." And that was the decision they made.
Which we talked a lot about because, and you can read this on Wikipedia or whatever on the internet, but I mean, clearly it was obvious to see just prior to its release in the theaters,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like, "Is this a Batman movie? What
Correct.
is this?" You know what I mean? It was very heavy on the Batman.
The poster was
It was
more
basic we're like
Batman.
it was.
Although I didn't like Keaton as an old man, and I thought.
Well, but he was very spry, and
Right.
the way he played it was very comical.
Right, and you gotta remember that he goes back in time to Ben Affleck's Batman,
That's right.
the Batman of
Right.
'89,
And
whatever
this
year that
isn't
was set.
you talked about this on a previous episode too, which was the way that, and it was cool to see it because you'd already described it, how Keaton as Bruce Wayne describes the multiverse with the
Correct.
spaghetti,
With spaghetti
with the
noodles,
pasta.
and
Right.
it took what? 5 minutes or less? Less
Less
than
than
that.
that. Less than that, yeah.
And Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is so confusing.
But is this really, I mean, I guess it is a multiverse concept, right? I guess.
Yes,
You
because
know?
Ezra Miller goes back and he's
Yeah.
warned
Right.
by Ben Affleck's Batman,
Right.
"Don't do it."
Right, and
You
the whole impetus is that, Barry Allen's mother is murdered, and he goes back
right,
to try to basically change history,
and he
and
tells
then
Ben Affleck, "I
and
can
he
save
kicks off,
your parents
and
too."
anybody that's ever seen Back to the Future knows, right? You don't mess with the
That's
space-time continuum,
correct,
right? I don't
correct.
care if you got a flux capacitor or what the hell you got.
That joke went on a little too long, the Eric Stoltz joke.
I liked it, you know
Right,
what I mean? I mean,
and
I
talk
loved
about
it.
what that is for people who don't know,
Well,
which
Eric
is
Stoltz was originally cast as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. In fact, most of the movie was already filmed
right.
before they made a switch. In the short story is that, they just Eric Stoltz is a great actor. We love
Mhm.
Eric Stoltz.
We like
He
Eric
just wasn't
Stoltz.
bringing the comedic element that they were looking
Mhm.
for, and
Right.
Michael J. Fox, of course, America's everybody's in love with Michael J. Fox. We've done
Right, at the
episodes about
time.
him. Yeah, and still today, like, who doesn't love Michael J. Fox,
But there's the irony there, okay?
Yes.
There's 2 ironic things that I wonder if they were on purpose.
Huh.
One was at the very opening sequence when first of all, the opening sequence I thought was horrible with the babies.
Thank you.
But
Because really, Mike, that it's about 20 minutes,
yes.
25 minutes. I clocked it. That's really the only issue I had with the film,
Right.
if I'm being honest.
Once they survive
You
that,
cut that out, Mike, it's a 2-hour film, let's go home, and I'm
that's
good to
right.
go,
And
right?
it's probably the best DC film since
Yes.
Uh, Chris Nolan's Batman
Can you give
series.
us a little? And it
going
wasn't so
super
much that,
fast.
it's the
Yeah.
when he's actually running, you
Remember
know?
when he did the running in a circle?
Yes.
And it was just like it was
Yes.
so goofy, it
It
was
was a little
funny.
goofy. It was hard not to chuckle a little bit at that, but
But the issue was Ezra Miller had all these um, off movie issues.
well, there's a
And
lot of
he makes a
controversies,
joke
yes.
about mental health at the beginning and says,
Now talk to me about that, Mike. So I was very surprised. You're right. There's just in that first opening sequence,
first
right?
opening
First 20 minutes,
sequence.
the basically the climax, the resolve, the resolution of that sequence
Mhm.
is this it includes this statement you're talking about, this line where he says basically he's saying, yeah, DC hasn't really figured out how to support their actors in the mental health department,
Correct.
something to that effect. How did was that they must have was that like a pickup shot that they did?
I don't know, and that's why I said there's 2 ironic things, and that was one of them. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Was that in there
I
before?"
was scratching my head. I loved it.
And then the second irony was the whole Eric Stoltz,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they had that same exact meeting about Ezra Miller,
Yeah.
and instead of
That's right.
replacing him with Michael J. Fox,
Yeah.
they rolled the dice and thought, "Okay, Michael Keaton can carry this."
Yeah. Now, I hope that and I don't want to make light of this, right? Because in all the things that I've read and kind of prepping for this conversation with you,
Yeah.
because it would be easy. It would be easy for us to just take shots, right, and be insensitive and all these things. And I don't want
Mhm.
to do that because we are talking about a human being who does clearly, is struggling with some mental health
Mhm.
issues.
Mhm.
Here we are, as we're recording this. It's Suicide Prevention Month, so point that out there. But I do hope that they are able to overcome these things, become well, make amends, all this stuff,
Mhm.
because I think they should be able to carry on in this character. That's how well I mean, I'm shocked that I'm even
Yeah.
hearing myself say this, but it's
And
true.
from what I've heard, that ship has sailed. He's done.
I really though.
The decision right now is, do they eliminate the Flash or recast? So, I'm pretty sure that ship has sailed, and you and I
I don't want a recasting.
yeah,
I don't
you
want
and
a
I
recasting.
so we're likely not gonna see the Flash if that's the case.
I mean,
Um,
listen, The Flash was never I was
no,
never a huge fan of that character. I
no,
didn't, like, hate the character, it just wasn't like, "Okay, whatever, The
right,
Flash." But, again, I just he they were great in this.
right. There was
You
more to
cannot
like.
deny the pro and there we just talked about this, Mike, on, in Red Eye. We did an
Mhm,
episode on the movie Red Eye,
mhm,
and we were talking about Rachel McAdams and the arc and the emotional arc that she goes through, right?
mhm.
And in a much, shorter span of time in the movie,
Yeah,
runtime
right.
wise. And Ezra Miller goes through the same thing in this. I mean,
Mhm,
there's a couple of scenes in here that'll rip your guts out. It's
mhm.
that good, man.
Yeah.
It's good acting.
Like I said, the opening sequence was silly and stupid, and I
It was
thought,
I didn't like it. It was an overuse of CGI, which was one of the problems I had with the film. There was some great effects, don't get me
mhm,
wrong, really
mhm,
amazing visual effects.
mhm.
But here and there, I just thought they just went, one step too far with it, and
Right.
that was one of them.
And the baby in the microwave was supposed to be funny?
I know. How am I laughing at that?
That
I'm
just
laughing at that.
I was just puzzled by that choice
Yeah,
to
I
even
was as
use
well.
that as humor.
Now, switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit
Mhm.
about Sasha Calley, who's actually from Boston. She's a Boston native.
She
I
was getting a
loved
ton of praise.
She was, and I loved her. I thought she was really good. She was in it just enough.
Yeah, to see, that was my issue. I
I
was
didn't think
like,
she was in it,
I
too
wasn't
much.
willing to go out on that limb and say she's great, she's fantastic, because she wasn't in it enough.
That's fair. That's
That
fair.
was my
That's fair.
take.
Yeah, so you're kind of, like, indifferent to the
Yeah,
whole
I was kind
thing.
I thought
You
she was
need more.
fine, but
You
I
need to
I
see
wanna
more.
see more of the character, which we will.
I think she's got what it takes. She's got the endorsement of Cavill,
And
Henry
I
Cavill.
think this eliminated 2 Batman movies with Michael Keaton. The Brave and the Bold, which people who know the animated Batman know that already.
Mhm.
And then there was another Batman movie that Keaton was gonna be in, and apparently those are gone because of this. Now, I had
Yeah,
no issues with Michael Keaton.
none,
I
none. I
loved
mean,
seeing
it's
him
hard.
back.
Yeah, for us as so many people to not be
Right,
just beyond nostalgic for that. I mean,
right.
and if you watch, there's a lot of documentaries you can watch on the making of the film. There's one that was like an hour and a half or something. It's
Oh,
very
have you
long.
seen that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, 'cause, I am gonna get the, disc for this, which
Absolutely.
I have Suicide Squad, I have the other
No, you
terrible
don't need to make
movies too.
apologies. This is I mean,
Right,
all in all, this is a good film, and
right.
it suffered from things that were certainly, to a certain degree, I'd say outside the cast control. It was more about,
Mhm.
I mean, can we have Flash go back and maybe erase when James Gunn was part of this whole universe?
Right,
I mean,
right.
you
And
know,
he had his fingers on the button, so to
well,
speak.
it's part of the reason why you see, spoiler alert here.
Mhm,
So put up a spoiler if you haven't seen The Flash yet.
mhm.
Go watch it, come back and watch this episode of the Oh Brother podcast. But it's why you see George Clooney show up at the end of the film,
Right, right.
right? That's just one of the influences or input. Now, I wasn't as critical of that as heard a lot of people
Oh,
be.
really? No, I had
I
no
thought it
issue
was
with that
really
at all.
funny. It
I
was
thought it
really
was
funny.
funny
I love seeing George back,
because you see this
and
car pull up, and I thought it was Affleck.
he knows his Batman gets on all the time.
Right,
Now
right.
he's not the worst of them.
No,
Over the years,
well,
like, you got Val,
right.
I love Val,
I
but,
didn't have a problem with him, but that movie was awful. The
yes.
2 Schumacher and RIP,
Was that with the one with Mr. Freeze? Was that with Arnold? The one
that
that
was the
George was
4th
in?
one.
Okay.
That was the one with Clooney,
Yes, okay.
when they
Okay.
opened on ice skates.
Now this one, you talk about screen time and characters and whatnot.
Mhm,
I mean, we there was certainly at least one different ending, that
mhm.
we were gonna get here. But, all this confluence of events, I don't know how much you can break it down, but where, like, with Gal Gadot and even Affleck and Cavill, of course, that announcement that was shocked the world, right? Like,
Right.
Henry Cavill comes out on his own Instagram account announcing he's coming back, and then just before you know it, blink your
James
eye and he's
Gunn.
gone. James
Yeah,
Gunn comes in and ruins the
yeah.
whole thing. Even though I think this kid that they've got slated to come may be able to bring the goods, but I will always love Henry Cavill. I think
Right.
everybody does, but
And he
but
deserved at least a
but
second movie.
right, but they all got basically written out of the universe because
Yeah.
Gunn and was it Peter Safran or whatever? They wanna go in a totally different direction.
The irony of that was the final sequence where anybody that played a character, starting with the original George Reeves, who did
Yes.
Superman on the TV show,
Nicolas Cage,
Nicolas
Superman.
Cage ends it.
One of the great nods to a Superman we never got, of course.
Right, which was gonna be Tim Burton,
Yes.
and whatever reason, you know, the studio hated Batman Returns
Mhm.
because it was so dark,
Yeah.
and he wanted to
Penguin's
go darker for the
Penguin's a tough
3rd.
character. Penguin's a tough
It
character,
is
though.
a tough character, but he's a penguin, a human penguin, and when
I
you see
mu I
Danny DeVito munching
but
on a raw
but I think
fish,
but I
it's
think
pretty
you've seen
disgusting.
but I think you've seen with the movie The Batman,
Mhm.
right, that you've seen how it can be done in a different way,
Yeah,
in a way that could be a little bit more, but, it's Tim Burton. He's over the top, he's
right,
fantastical, that's his world,
and
so
it was funny because he was slated to do 3. He shows up and he said "Read the room." It was
yeah.
clear they were like, Tim, don't you want to do something more light, like, one of those Pee Wee Herman things?" And Burton's kinda like, "Maybe you guys wanna go with someone
Wasn't that one of
else?"
his first films? Didn't he did Pee-wee's
He did Pee Wee,
Big Top or whatever, right?
yeah, yeah, that was one of his early films, not his first, Wasn't, Johnny Depp, um, Scissorhands before that? I think so.
It might have been, I'm not
Yeah,
sure,
with
not sure,
Winona
but
Ryder in it.
now this one goes back. I mean, this was in development way back in the early 2000s, and
The
if you read
Flash.
yeah, The
Yeah.
Flash, thank you.
Mhm.
You know, you like James Wan, speaking
Mhm.
of Horror Halloween Fest, like, you're a big fan of James Wan.
Mhm.
You're always giving him his props here,
Yes. Yeah.
and, he was attached to this at one
Yeah.
point, and, all this stuff is happening, and he ends up choosing Aquaman, which maybe not James's greatest decision.
No.
One of the worst films ever, in my opinion, as I've said on the show before, and I stand
Yeah.
by that. And we did get an appearance from Jason Momoa at the end of this as well as Aquaman.
Right.
One of the cameos I loved the best was, his father, Arthur Senior or whatever, played by Tamora Morrison, who, of course, plays Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett and
Oh,
was
okay.
in
I
the
didn't know
Star
that was his
Wars
dad.
prequel series. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, so he's in it too. It's a couple of funny I mean, there's so many nods in this film, it's hard to keep
Mhm.
up. I'm sure I missed half of them
Yeah,
too,
the
but
whole ending was just a
the
nod
whole
to every
ending.
character you could that was
Yeah.
in the
But
DC
but but
universe.
things like this is the stuff I loved. Okay, first of all, seeing the Batmobile, the
Mhm.
1989 Batmobile was just, like,
Right.
mind-blowing. The cave they built for this film was amazing,
Right.
and they even had a reference at one point, that was a callback to the laugh of Nicholson, the Joker, the bag that had the little yeah,
Correct.
so they did a good job of paying homage to a lot of that history.
Right, and some people didn't like that ending that showed all the different characters. I thought it was
I
fine.
thought it was cool.
It was very colorful, and with each color kinda came a new
Yeah,
character.
right,
I
right.
had no problem with it,
And
and
the Dark Flash, that whole
right,
storyline, like,
right.
I bought into it. I was with it.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Who is that?" Like, right you don't know right till the end of it,
Yeah,
what's
and
going on there.
I like Sasha, Cally, Superwoman, like her, given where we find her in the early part of the film when we first come upon her, right? She's been
Mhm.
held captive and all this stuff. And excuse
And
me.
they think they're going to rescue Superman
Correct.
when
And I
it's
couldn't tell who
her.
it was. It looked like what's his face from Lord of the Rings, Gollum at one point. I couldn't
Yeah,
tell what was going so dark. But what I liked about her portrayal, as you said, and what little we may have gotten in the film,
right.
arguably, was she's playing it as, and of course, if you go back into the sort of comic history, storyline where she grew up on Krypton, like she grew up right. She identifies herself very much as an alien,
Mhm.
as opposed to Superman as Clark, who very much identifies with the human species,
Correct,
right? Because
correct.
he came here as a baby. And so she has this just incredible anger built up in her.
Well,
And
I mean, she
that
was
scene between her
tortured.
and Zod was amazing.
Yeah, she was tortured for years,
Mhm.
and they were trying to get because 'cause they're cousins, right? She's
Yes,
actually
they're cousins.
Superman's cousin,
That's right.
and they're trying to get her to give his location,
Right.
and she won't give it up,
Won't give it up.
so she gets tortured until they break her out, and they
Right.
think they're breaking out Superman,
Mhm.
and the kinda gag is like, "That's not him. Who's that?"
Right. She can kick some serious ass, though. I tell you
Yeah,
right
and
now, like,
Michael
wow.
Shannon, another character, wasn't in it enough.
No, he wasn't, and, I had that was another one, little minor, little like, his voice as Zod didn't seem quite the same as
Yeah.
his original portrayal of it. I don't know, but you know what I love, and we should never look past the fact that, like, we should be thankful
Mhm.
that these actors are still healthy and well, not that it's been 100 years, but
Right.
even going to Man of Steel, it's been how many years?
Right, right.
And he's still here, and he's able to come back and
He's still in
reprise the
great
role.
shape,
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, he looked great. Looked
Yeah.
amazing.
And Michael Keaton, obviously, they either dyed his hair or, you
Yeah.
know, whatever
he
they
looked
did to
just
make him look older.
yeah, and see, I didn't even pick up when I was watching it that there's references to his actual original the Wayne Manor, the mansion
Correct.
back in there with the floor, the tiles on the floor.
Right.
Remember where he has all of those, what is it? Armor,
Mhm.
those armor, whatever that's
Yeah,
set up in
who's
that
the
room.
comic that was in it that I hated in the
Oh,
first
yes.
one? What's his name?
Robert
Robert Wool.
Boom, nailed it. See, together, it's why we
Yeah,
make such a it's the Old Brother
exactly,
podcast for crying
exactly.
out
You
loud.
get the first, I get the last,
Now,
but
the history of Cyborg in relationship to this whole thing, and
right,
talk about DC going, "No, we're good."
right.
Right, this actor tries to take a stand and like, "I'll come back if XYZ." He's got all these terms and like, "We're good.
We're
Goodbye,
good.
Cyborg,"
Right.
which I never cared for that character anyways,
No, and I didn't
but
know him from the comics.
nah,
A lot of people
didn't
did, but
really care.
that's what's gonna happen to Ezra Miller. He's getting that treatment now,
I think that's a
and
I think I hope that's not true because first of all, now 2022, all right,
mhm.
clearly was not a good year for Ezra Miller. I mean,
No.
if you read all of the incidents, it is
Mhm.
longer than the lineage of how this film came to be. Like, it goes
Yeah,
a long ways,
yeah,
and it very
and we
serious
saw
stuff.
some of it on
We
TMZ.
did, of course, and again, I wanna be sensitive to it, but, we haven't really heard anything from them recently, certainly.
Mhm.
Now, there was a quick didn't they appear, but then they didn't do press, but they appeared at the premiere, I believe, of The
He
Flash?
was at the premiere,
Okay.
but just kinda gave a, "Hello, yeah, enjoy the
Yeah,
film."
right.
They
But,
kept him off the mic.
they've issued an apology. They, from what we know, are seeking help,
Mhm.
and, from, little experience I have and just everything I've read, we're dealing with some very serious issues, it seems like, and,
Yeah, but you know what else we're dealing
yeah,
with is a guy, let's say, 68, chomping a cigar going, "We lost $100,000,000 in that
look,
thing.
there's no
Get rid of
question,
this kid."
but he isn't the reason why.
No, I
I don't
agree,
think he's the
and I
reason
said
why.
it back then, I was
Although
trying to
interestingly, Mike, let's real quick, I wanted to pull this up, so let's talk about this. So Rotten
Mhm,
Tomatoes,
mhm,
okay, for what it's worth until the, Oh Brother rating system hits the airwaves here soon.
right,
The critics, have it at a 63, and then the audience score is at an 83. So
right,
the audience likes it, as we
mhm,
do.
mhm,
Um, the
and
critics are
and
fair, but.
and it showed up on, Max pretty quick.
So what do you I don't know. I don't think this is a super easy decision for the studio to make, quite frankly. I don't.
Well, I
I
think
get
it's already
you
made.
you make the best point, right? At the end of the day, all they care about is the money.
Correct.
And this thing tanked. It lost a shit ton of money, hundreds
Right,
of millions of dollars by the projections. So,
right.
yeah, it would be hard to get around that. But can you think of any other example of that where maybe they did continue on after such a bomb like that?
I honestly I can't.
Yeah.
I can't think of
Well,
somebody
okay.
that
Why are
survived
we
that.
getting an Aquaman sequel? That was a piece of
Well,
wreck.
but,
Did
some
it make
people
money?
liked it. I think it
Did it
made
make
money.
did it make money?
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it definitely cleared the 100,000,000 mark, I think, in the opening weekend,
Yeah.
and I remember watching Flash, numbers, and I
Mhm.
had seen it.
Mhm.
So, I was like, "Wow."
You know what? And I think you're right because as I look at this, let's see here. I'm very curious.
Remember, the studio yanked this out
Mhm.
of theaters so quick because they had their savior, which was Indiana Jones, was also tanked.
See, this is amazing to me. It's absolutely flabbergasting to me, Mike, but help me understand this, please.
Mhm,
Okay, so the budget on Aquaman was less. It was 160 million estimated, right?
mm,
It opens at less than 70 million, all right?
mhm.
Worldwide gross $1.1 billion. So
This
look at the international take on this. Now, what do you make of that domestic? Is that a super box office hit, or is it like,
No.
okay, that's about what we expect, or
No, but
it should
you
have
know
been
what?
$500 million easy?
Right. At the end of the day, they don't really care. They're counting on that overseas money, and Flash didn't do it. Now,
Right, okay,
it did
that's
do
fair.
better money than it did in the United States. The domestic take was 109
Yeah.
and the international was like 150, right? But still,
Yes.
look at Aquaman,
Yeah, it's a
a
little
much
yeah,
worse movie,
much worse.
did over 1,000,000,000.
But you would chalk it up to the controversies.
Yeah.
But okay, though, but hold on.
Mhm.
People went and saw it, or did that prevent people from even going seeing it? Is that
I
what we're
think
saying?
well, clearly the second week, they yanked it. They pulled it out of like, it was in 3,600 theaters, they pulled it out of
Yeah,
3,000 theaters.
right.
So it was impossible for it to make the kind of money that it
It
might have made.
it's amazing it took them a couple of months to get it to max,
Right.
to be honest with you.
And it got there fast. I mean, it's been at max for a good month, I think.
Yeah, but where was it such a dog in the theater, he thought it was boom, okay, end of June, let's get it,
Yeah, well, it kind
you
of
know?
felt like that to me. It's taken a long time to get to disc, but
Right.
that's got to do with production and,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, getting, there's only so many factories that produce, you
Right.
know, Blu-rays and 4Ks
But,
and
I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is the reason in of itself, but you had a bunch of director changes. This thing changed hands more than, I mean, it was crazy, right?
right.
Before it gets to Andy to direct it.
Well, look at you. Like, let's use you as an example. You weren't
I
out
wasn't
there.
slated to direct it.
No, 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 I'm talking as a fan, right? As a
Yeah,
movie fan,
right.
you weren't out there the opening weekend. Really had little interest.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I have to sit and analyze that, you would think the Keaton bit would have been enough for me
Right.
to go,
In
and I
fact,
don't.
when we watched the first look
Mhm.
and we saw Keaton and we
Yeah,
saw him say, "I'm Batman,"
yeah,
we were like, "Okay, yeah, I can see
right.
myself going to
But
that."
again, those that have seen it think it's good.
Right,
I mean,
right,
an 83 is a decent rating for
right,
whatever
right.
that's worth. So, um, yeah, I look, there's, there's a lot of tentacles
Yes.
to this, to a review of
More
this
than
film,
Doc Ock has.
and we could go on for another 3 hours, going into, drilling
Mhm,
down and going down the
mhm,
rabbit hole. But I was really, really, I just wanted to get on here and put that statement out there for me,
mhm.
anyways, that this thing, it's a quote, a phrase we love. It didn't fail because of Ezra Miller, in my opinion.
And
His performance was fantastic.
and I said it back when I
I mean,
first saw it.
think of the complexities
Mhm,
of the different personalities he had to play
mhm.
in this film. And then all the delays and just, I don't know.
And
It's just,
even, it was so when he's sitting there talking to his parents and he first realizes, "Oh my god, there's another me here." When he
yeah,
sees himself
right.
and he goes and he kinda tackles himself out on the front lawn,
Yeah.
and you really see 2 different characters. I mean,
You do. I
he
bought into
looked
that.
different,
I
not
bought
just his
into it.
hair, it was a whole look
Well,
to
that's
him.
that's the acting. I
Yeah.
think we need to give it up. It's, look, I've not gone to acting school. You've had more training in that than I have. I've gone to like an acting class, but um, that's no small feat in
No,
my estimation. And I
no.
just think he pulled it off. They pulled it off brilliantly. So I just want to go on record as saying it was a really good performance. That is not why this film is considered a flop.
Mhm.
And again, this thing,
And you chop
it
that
was a re
first 20 minutes,
you chop that first 20 minutes?
you got a
Yeah,
good movie.
maybe, right. And this started production in like 2020, early
Yeah.
2020, pre-COVID, of course,
And
but was another one impacted by that, among other things that we've talked about.
yeah, it goes way back. I mean, the television show, The Flash, which was on the CW, they're the ones that take all the DC franchises and try to make them into shows.
Yeah.
And, usually keep them on the air for like 5 years too long.
Yeah, yeah.
But back when they were making that first season,
Right.
this was in production. And they did, I think,
Right.
9 seasons.
Right, exactly. Well, I
So
told you,
that'll
2007, 2008. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I believe, if I have it correctly, which again, to connect it to something current, which is the current writers and actors strike.
Right.
The writers strike of 2007, 2008 was another factor in this whole thing, which is, I think, had something to do with James Wan choosing to go in
To
a different
bail.
direction
Yeah.
and go to Aquaman, so
I can remember I wanted you to see it just to point out the Clooney
yeah. Oh, is it really?
Batman. I remember it
Yeah,
was like, "Can I tell you one thing about it?"
yeah.
And you were like, "No,
Dude,
I'll see it. I'll see it."
Clooney's still, like, drinking from the fountain of youth, whatever's going on there,
Yeah.
'cause the dude looks
Oh, he
great,
had the white hair going,
He's
the
got the white
silver
hair, but
fox.
he's a silver fox,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So, well, Mike, listen, I'm totally down to go halves on the physical/digital
All right.
purchase here.
'Cause there is a digital in it.
This is one that I would have no shame in having in
And
my
the
collection.
extras are a lot of Batman stuff that I
Yeah,
wanna see,
yeah, for sure.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, so what do you think? Was this worth a surprise episode or what?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wanted to talk about it way back when,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was off my radar, but when you started saying, "I saw something that you mentioned a couple months ago,"
Right.
I instantly kinda went there. I thought, "Did he see Flash?" I think he finally saw Flash,
Yeah.
so
So so you've heard what we think. We want to hear what you think. So
Mhm.
if you've seen the Flash, drop us some comments on the YouTube video. Let
Did
us
you
know what you
not
think.
go because of the controversy?
Absolutely. Let us know where you stand with the whole Ezra Miller
Mhm.
storyline. That'd be really curious to know if that had any impact
Right.
whatsoever.
And I'm no fan of Ezra Miller's, but
I'm not
I
not
thought
a
he did
fan.
I thought
Well,
he
you
did
know,
a fine job.
you're not condoning the personal behavior that we've
Right,
seen in the media, but
right,
again, let's reiterate that clearly it seems to have been influenced by some
right.
serious kind of mental health struggles that they're going
Ironically, and I
through.
don't know if you saw this clip on TMZ, he's getting arrested and they're putting his stuff in like a bag, which, they take everything off you.
Right.
And the only thing he's freaking out about is his flash ring.
Oh, I didn't know
Did you
that.
see that?
I
He's
didn't see
telling the
that.
cops, "Can you be careful with that ring? That ring means a lot to me." And
Mm,
that, another irony to
mm.
point out.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
foretelling perhaps.
yeah.
All right, well, listen, this is your episode on The Flash from the O Brother podcast. Better late
Mhm.
than never.
You can catch it on, Max, right?
Catch it on Max at right now. Yeah, absolutely. And you said it's out already, or when does it hit on physical media?
It's out already on physical
Okay. All
media.
right. So
Yep.
pick it up on 4K.
Mhm.
So I think after this, we're going to talk about a little purchase. I'll send you some PayPal.
All right.
You make that deal happen.
All right.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the O Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Come on, Mike. Let's run out of here.
I'm already going faster
Give us the
than
flash
you.
part.